We may be live.
And we're live.
Yes, we are.
With Outside the Box 2020, Clarity-Based Marketing. This is Jannis Paulk, and I'm Dr. John Rothwell, nurse practitioner with Island Directed Primary Care. And it's been about 2 weeks since we've seen each other, because last week I was remembering my fallen brothers playing rugby in upstate New York, and we had a wonderful time just being brothers and sisters and serving our country, and it was a nice weekend getaway. So thank you for that reprieve from Thursday, and it's good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. I saw your video, or not your videos, your pictures while you were gone, and missed you last week. I actually had somebody say, "Hey, what happened to you? I didn't see your video." I said, "We didn't do it. If you listened all the way to the end," which, we ramble on sometimes, so people don't listen all the way to the end. But yeah, so we're missed when we're not here by at least one person. So I miss you when you're not here. So today we are going to have a quick little talk, hopefully, but we're going to talk about something that is being talked about in everybody's households and all over the news and everywhere, especially because Florida has been determined to be the epicenter of the new COVID surge. And so things seem like they might be getting a little crazy out there again. I know some people who are being directly affected by it right now, and sending prayers up for them and their family. And so the Delta variant, I'm gonna ramble for just a second, and then I want to hear what you have to say about this. So the Delta variant seems like it's jumping out there and taking hold and creating havoc. And personally, my own experience, I'm vaccinated. I'm not, I believe everybody should do what's right for them. But I do have some friends who have not been vaccinated, who've made the decision now to get vaccinated. And I haven't pressured them to do that. They've made that just based off of what they're seeing now. And so it's interesting. It's interesting to me what's happening. And I really am eager to hear your thoughts and your experiences on what's going on out there now.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because we're kind of back in the beginning almost, where the media is saying a bunch of things, depending on which side of the media street that you listen to. Social media, everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a friend. Everybody has an experience. Everybody works in this medical facility or that one. And we're back in the what's real and what's true and what's not. And what's real is COVID's real. Okay.
It is.
And so that part is it. We're my wife had to say goodbye to someone last night,
I'm
she
sorry.
couldn't actually she couldn't physically tell them goodbye, but she got notice that his O2 saturations were X, and they didn't expect him to live through the evening. and he was not very supportive of vaccines, and
so he was not vaccinated.
So he was not vaccinated, and he was retired, so he's a retirement age, but he was young and healthy. I mean, he looked 20 years younger than his age, and he was as far as I'm concerned, he was a stud. I used to tease my wife. I'm like, "Are you sure you're just going out to lunch with him?" And then she goes, "Yeah, but super awesome guy." And and I was taken by surprise too. I, in my own practice, I guess right now have about 3% of my patients have COVID.
Have COVID? Have you lost any patients? Is that too much to ask? Okay.
No, I haven't. We had one patient who had multiple what we call comorbidities, or multiple chronic illnesses, who ended up in the hospital on a ventilator. And so now we're kind of dealing with the whole COVID long haul syndrome, if you will, with them. Everybody else has recovered quite well. Those people who are sick right now, so I had 6 patients who were vaccinated who got COVID. I called the CEO of the testing facility to determine what kind of variant it was. And they wouldn't tell me. They told me that they were only allowed to report to the Department of Health. So I,
That
said
doesn't
okay,
make
but
sense.
well, they.
Why does that? Why?
So I don't know the direct answer to that. I can only make an assumption that they didn't want to at the time. The Delta variant wasn't here yet,
Okay.
as far as publicly speaking, and everything that was going on in India was happening, and so you had this big influx of the Delta variant in India, and all of a sudden, I had a group of patients who were, at a common location with a bunch of other people, and a number of them tested positive. So about 40% of that group. And out of that 40%, I want to say, out of those 40 people, there's roughly almost 40% of those people actually had the vaccine. And so I was curious, because all of those people who had the vaccine, some had Pfizer, some had Moderna, some had Johnson & Johnson. So there was no consistency across the board with that. And so when I called the CEO, of this lab that we were sending the PCR swabs, they weren't rapid tests, the PCRs to see if he could kind of give me an idea. And basically he said, no, but, and so we can kind of make that assumption that it was the Delta variant at that time. And that's fine. There's a beta variant too, and none of these things should be surprising to the medical community, and really should be surprising to the community in general, because what we have is, with influenza, there's many variants of influenza, and it's why we have a vaccine every year. And it's also why we have, the elderly, in some cases being encouraged to take the vaccine twice a year and that kind of thing. What's going to be interesting is the long-term research on the nanotechnology that's being utilized in the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine compared to the adenovirus type vaccines that's with the Johnson & Johnson, and just because it's a newer technology. And so it's going to be interesting to see the stability against the multiple variants that are more likely than not going to happen. So we'll see. And I'd like to see with the Delta variant, are you hearing much about India and COVID right now?
No, I have not personally.
Or the UK, no. But you remember there was this big spike, and so it lasted and there was a lot of deaths, but the Delta variant was a big high spike, and then it dropped off, and then in the UK a big high spike, and then it dropped off. And so I would argue that right now the US most likely is getting their big spike now, and so end of September,
and then it'll drop off. Gotcha. So one of my friends who had not gotten vaccinated, decided, through what's going on now, go ahead and get the vaccine, called his doctor and said, okay, so which vaccine is best? And the doctor said, all of them. And he said, that wasn't very helpful to me. And I said, no, it was. That means just go and get a vaccine. What he's saying is get whatever's available to you. Do you agree with that? Or is there a particular vaccine that you would recommend as the first choice?
So I wouldn't necessarily argue with the comment that, all of them, which is the best, all of them. Clearly, we've seen in the media different adverse effects or side effects from the different vaccines that are out there. and we're not getting into research here. It's more
No,
a medical opinion or healthcare opinion, and so I'll kind of stick along that lines.
sure.
Um, I like to be. I'm a technologist at heart, just like
Mhm.
I am in healthcare, and so
Right.
I love technology,
Me
and
too.
I've watched it rapidly change in other industries, and I
Mhm.
think we have some of the best scientists in the world in our country. So for us to um, I like the new technologies. I like the nanotechnologies. So I like the Pfizer's, Moderna's. Those are my preferences,
Okay.
particularly because so the Johnson and Johnson was the it uses the adenovirus, which is a known technology, and
Mhm.
when SARS-CoV-1 came out in the early 2000s, we tried to make a not we, but the world tried to make a vaccine for that, and they were unsuccessful. And were they unsuccessful because of time? I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to see something like 27 countries were affected by this, and and it lasted for a couple of years, and they weren't able to get this vaccine out. And so, well, how can they do it now? Were they just ahead of the game and they just saved everything in a file for later? Was
Mhm.
someone still working on it? Whatever the case is, and did we have to just do some kind of adjustment from the SARS-CoV-1 to SARS-CoV-2? I don't know.
Mhm.
uh, but at the end of the day, um, I like to be on the forefront of technology, so I'm going with that. Not the guinea pig. The technology's been
Hi,
around for
Corey.
a decade,
We
so
have somebody chatting with us. I'm
we
so
do.
happy. Yeah. Doesn't take
You
much
can
to make me
see it
happy.
actually.
Corey, you made me happy. Good job, Corey. Yeah. Okay. So I have three questions. I was thinking about it. I thought, let me ask some very pointed questions, and Corey will probably have some questions too. She always so great about that. So I asked you which one was better, and you said your personal opinion, you like the Moderna and the Pfizer because of the nanotechnologies. So can you stack? Because okay, and let me tell you why I asked that. So my dad had COVID back in February. And after he recovered, he got the vaccination. And he's still very, he's 85 years old, so he's very aware of the risk, and he has had it and doesn't want it again. He's tasted that and doesn't want another bite. And so I saw him yesterday, and a good friend of his had casual exposure, which I think we're all kind of getting exposure. I have a neighbor here in my building that there are four of them that have it right now. And so that's a little like a little startling. So my dad is going to get tested because he's been exposed like once or twice removed, and he doesn't have any symptoms, but he's going to go get tested. And we were talking yesterday about. He said he thought he would go get another vaccine, and so he got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in probably I don't know whenever it came out when it first came out. So what's your should we stack? Should we plan to get another a booster or what's the word on that?
So I think the answer is we don't know yet, right? And so I know that's not what mainstream people want to hear, but let's look at this. So I was doing research early on when COVID first came out, and I found that people who had SARS-CoV-1, that there was some literature that showed that people had antibodies for 3 years, and
Uh-huh.
we were being told in our social media campaigns and in the public that the antibodies were only lasting 3 months. And just in my own practice, I had someone who was asymptomatic,
Uh-huh.
had COVID, asymptomatic, and they had positive antibodies for over 9 months. Okay. And
Okay.
so,
Okay.
so these, and not even vaccinated. So we don't know the answer to that yet. Um,
Okay.
let's look at history and let's think about this. If there's a handful of variants right now, and if we know influenza has 100 variants, and we know
Mhm.
that we have to update the vaccine for influenza on an annual basis,
Mhm.
is there a chance that we're going to have to do that with the COVID vaccine? So surely the answer to that is yes. Can I say more likely than not? I can't, because nanotechnology is new, and
Yeah.
hopefully this is one of the value adds of having that nanotechnology and the spiked RNA to, one of the benefits is so that we don't have to. So that is still yet to be seen because it's new.
So
I
the
know, like,
vaccines now are still for the original variant. There are no vaccines available for the Delta variant.
well, no, the vaccines right now are showing that many of them
Mm-hmm.
are beneficial towards the Delta variant, which is why people who are vaccinated
Mm-hmm.
more likely than not will not end up in the hospital
Right.
and will have decreased mortality. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Now,
That's
I can
good.
tell you this. I have people in the hospital saying that everybody that's in the hospital, everybody who's dying, they weren't vaccinated. That's not 100% true. Okay.
Right.
That's just what's
Yeah.
being told out to the public. And so the
Right.
reality is people who got the vaccines are to help, but they don't prevent infection. Okay. So influenza, 46%, right? And you can still get the flu. It's just not as bad. With the COVID vaccine, you can still get COVID. It's just not as bad. Now, I know people who had multiple chronic illnesses who got the vaccine, who got COVID, and they were able to remain at home. They did well. Yeah, they felt crappy for a few days and stuff. They did extremely well, relatively speaking.
Right.
I would say that if they didn't have the vaccine, we may not be telling that same story.
Right.
Again,
Right. And
speculation.
there are people who are not vaccinated who get it, and they, it's bad flu, super bad flu. My neighbors here, they're pretty sick, but they're not going to the hospital. And one of them, I think, is on the way to recovery. Was sick, really sick for 3 or 4 or 5 days maybe, but is on
Yeah, and I
the
have a
way to
couple of those
recovery.
too.
So,
I have a couple
hmm,
of those who they're
yeah,
not
yeah,
vaccinated and
yeah,
they still don't want to get vaccinated. We have a specific treatment protocol that we do for them. They fall more in that integrative functional medicine class versus traditional medicine. And so we do a lot of supplementation and building
right.
the immune system that way, along with nutrition versus some of the other things that are out there today.
And these are very active people, healthy, young. So, but
A
that doesn't
mix for
necessarily,
me.
yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Okay, so that's a good segue. How long after, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not 100% sure, but how long after, so somebody gets sick with COVID, they haven't been vaccinated, and they're like, oh man, this is terrible. I never want to do this again. Just like my dad, this is what happened to my dad. He got COVID. He wasn't vaccinated at the time. I don't know if they had the vaccine then or not, but so he got COVID, he got well. Once he got well, he went and he got the vaccination. How long after you have recovered, or how long after you have had COVID, is it safe to go get the vaccination? Is there a time frame, or is
I
it
want to say the literature says 90 days. Again,
okay?
I question all the literature.
Okay. Yeah, I think my friend
You're
asked
breaking up.
me, and I said, "Am I?
I missed your last question.
My connection's bad. Are we still on? Can you not hear me?"
You're you're you were doing great, and now there. You go. You can pop back. Can you talk?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, now we're good.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so repeat the question, please.
Okay. I'm sorry. So my neighbor asked, how long is it going to be before I can get the vaccination? And we did a little bit of research. Well, she did a little research, and I'm wanting to say it was like 100 and some days, 120 days maybe.
Yeah, I want to think it's 90.
Corey says she hears me fine, so it must be you.
Well, I hear me fine. I don't know why. Okay.
Okay.
It is what it is. So
Yeah, it is what it is. We only have about 5 minutes and you have to go. So I wanted to kind of wrap up and give people some insight. So your recommendation on vaccine, if you haven't been vaccinated and you're thinking about doing it, then your recommendation is Moderna or Pfizer. Is that correct?
So if you've chosen to receive the vaccine,
Mm-hmm.
then I myself took Moderna and I gave the Moderna to my family. Moderna is probably the first of my choice, then Pfizer. I've had some patients with good effects with Johnson and Johnson as well.
I did the
And then
Johnson
if
and
you're
Johnson.
if
Scared me to death afterwards. The next day after I got the Johnson and Johnson is when, like, it was all craziness. So, but I did just fine with it. It scared me a little bit, but it scared me. I'm not beating the drum. Telling everybody that they need to go do it. I feel strongly that it's a personal choice. You do what you do, but I'm glad that I did it. It's a level of security. So Corey asked, do people recover 100%? And that is a great question. I really would like to hear your response on that, because I know somebody who's really sick right now. I know of someone who's really sick right now, and I think they're concerned about scarring in the lungs and that sort of thing. And so do people recover 100% after they have COVID?
So I can't see Corey's question. I think it's
You
loaded.
can't see it?
No, I can't. Not here on my screen, but that's okay. Oh, there we go. Now I can.
Nice. I love it. I love it so much.
There
Thank
you
you,
go.
Corey, for
No,
participating, because that's what we're here for.
awesome.
I love
So
it.
look, everybody's different, and everybody is everybody should be treated different. And so I have patients, and I know of people who had COVID, guys who were up playing rugby with me in the mountains this past week, right?
Yeah.
100% recovered. Okay.
Okay.
And I have
Okay.
I have
I have
patients
some
who are
friends. My dad.
not.
Okay. My dad,
I
though,
have
my
patients
dad
who
is
are not.
85 years old. I really thought it was going to kill him. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I thought it was going to kill him. Not only is he 85, he was going through the loss of his wife. He was in extreme grief. I mean, he was just about as vulnerable could be. And I
Mm.
thought for sure it was going to just kill him. And it did not. And there seems to be no lasting effects. However, I will say he had it in February, and he is just now, August, starting to look healthy again.
And that's pretty consistent. I mean, I found that, some people it takes 6 months to recover.
Yeah.
But again, this is just too new, and everybody's a little different. I'm faculty at University of Central Florida, and when I working with my doctorate students, which, by the way, Nola is Dr. Nola Romberger as of
That's
last night.
amazing.
So we're super, super proud.
I'm proud of her too. Way to go, Nola. Dr.
We,
Nola.
we, I always letting my students know, don't use words like prove
Yeah.
and generalize everybody. You want to talk about certain levels of significance and stuff like that, and use the actual the numbers to kind of speak for that, and confidence intervals and p-values and all that good doctoral stuff. But at the end of the day, don't assume that just because you're male and you're the same weight and you're the same height, you're going to respond the same way. And same thing for women, of your age and, height and weight. And so, again, it's why I love doing what I do, where everyone deserves to be heard as an individual. And so Candy always has the longest questions. Can I look at that real quick before we go?
Yes, please do. Please do. Candy always has very, how does HIPAA fit in all this outward talk at did you get the vaccine? That's probably a subject for the next time we talk, because Dr. John has to go. He's got an appointment at noon, so we have 2 minutes. But that's a great question. I would love for us, Corey, we'll talk about that next week. I think next week it would be appropriate for us to extend this conversation.
Real quick. No, let's go. Let's go. So let me do, I got 2 minutes.
Okay. Rock
so
on.
One, in Candy's piece. Okay. Candy's question, again, is, one of her friends got the vaccine recently. Then they tested 3 days later, they tested positive, and basically assuming that they were more likely than not infected prior to get the vaccine. Dr. David Williams, the owner of MedFast, this happened with him. I say that because he publicly told people, right? And so, yeah, that's absolutely happens. And so the biggest challenge is when you get the second vaccine, which he did 3 weeks later, because it was Moderna. Look, let me tell you, the adverse effects are, they were brutal, right? High fevers, fatigue, mental, but he got it. But that is what's expected. That's the body doing its thing. You're not getting the virus. We're not putting in a virus. This is a messenger RNA vaccine. So you're not actually getting sick. You're getting symptoms, but you're not getting sick. And so we would expect that hopefully his immunity system is rock solid because we gave him a double dose. But I can tell you, he was one miserable man. I treated him at his home with IV fluids and a bunch of different stuff throughout the night. It was crazy scary. It was crazy scary, but
that doesn't sound to me. So I'm just going to be honest. If I were her friend that, had COVID when I got the initial shot, after what you just said, I would be like, no, I'm not getting the second shot.
I'm talking about the first shot when he found out he had COVID, not after the second. The second shot, he had symptoms. He had high fevers and stuff like that. They lasted 3 or 4 days. He didn't need anything for that.
So when he actually had COVID.
Yeah, when he actually had COVID, when he basically got a double whammy, had COVID and got the vaccine.
So her friend is probably pretty darn sick right now.
Yeah, many of people that I know that got the first shot and or had COVID and got the first shot, my son being one of them. He was pretty miserable after the first shot. Then we didn't at first give him the second shot, and then we eventually gave him the second shot, and he tolerated fine. I tolerated it all fine. So let's go down to Corey. How does HIPAA fit in all this outward talk? And did you get the vaccine?
No, not but did you get the vaccine? Like there's like people saying, oh, did you get vaccinated? Oh, did you get vaccinated? So how does HIPAA fit into that? I think is what she's saying.
Yeah. So, okay, I was about to say, because I got the vaccine. So look, reality is I don't tell anybody. Nobody has the right to ask you, according to HIPAA. That's personal health information.
I'm going to jump out of the screen. Keep talking.
And so if you're, in your work environment and stuff like that, they can't ask you, well, is that blister, is that canker sore on your mouth herpes simplex virus 1 or herpes simplex virus 2? They can't ask you that. They might assume that that's what it is. It could be a vitamin C deficiency or whatever the case may be. They can't ask you, are you taking medicine for these kind of things? So they can't do that in a generic case. What kind of illness did you have? So technically, they shouldn't be able to ask you that. Now, that being said, there's only one state that's not a right to work state in our country. And so if they want to set up rules and it's their business and they want to say everybody needs to have X, like healthcare does this all the time, you need a tuberculin, you need, TD and stuff like that in order to work here, surely they could do that and make that a requirement to work at their facility. Is it right? That's an ethical thing that, each individual has to ask themselves. So is it a HIPAA violation? No. Would they know that you actually had it or had the vaccine? Sure, but you have to be willing to give them that information. So it's kind of up to you.
Hey,
we tend to be instant gratification people in our country, and we tend to be quite stubborn. And so,
what are you saying?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm both of those things. Okay, so this is a great conversation, and let's extend it next week because I have and remind me. Come on. Come on.
I'm catching up.
We have people who are trying to talk with us. Goodness. All right, not next week, the next week.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about it again because I have some interesting information. I'm planning a cruise in January. I'm going to be hosting a conference on a cruise, a training conference. And I got some really interesting information about how the cruises are handling vaccinations, you know, people who have been vaccinated versus people who have not.
Sure.
And it was really interesting because, you know, they can't require it. They can't require it in Florida because the governor said, man, you can't do that. And so they came up with a very interesting way to address that. So we'll talk about that next time. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Always, always, always. And have a
Thank
great
you, Corey
day.
and Candy.
Yes, Corey and Candy, thank you so much. It makes me so happy. I love seeing those questions. I love being able to actually talk about things that matter to people. And have a great day. I'll miss you next week, but I'll see you the following, and we'll talk about this some more.
Awesome. Take care,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye, everybody.